Hello everyone and welcome to a character speculation and theory video. Today, I'm going to be talking about the ever-anticipated Baizhu. He has been in the game since version 1.0, and is still not a playable character as of the release of this video, although that might change with drip marketing next week. Anyways, I figured that today I'd go over what we know about him, and what he could be hiding. First seen in the second act of the Liyue Archon quests back in version 1.0, Baizhu is a Dendro vision wielder who lives in Liyue, and is the owner of Bubu Pharmacy. His medicine is quite renowned in Liyue for its healing abilities, although the taste of it is rather bitter and leaves much to be desired. Qiqi has high praise for his medical skills, and recommends people to go to him when they can't identify their symptoms. Jinyan is also grateful to him for his voice-preserving medicines, which help her to be able to sing more. Hongdo, a sickly young girl who dislikes the taste of the medicine, only visits him because he is so kind to her. Even Xiao is aware of him, showing how far his reputation reaches. Additionally, he supplied Zhonglian the Traveler with the everlasting incense they needed for the rite of parting, provided Ningguang with medical gauze for the fight against Baizhu, and also made Uncle Tian an antidote after he had been poisoned during the events of Yelan's story quest. Even though he is kind and his medicines are effective, his business practices can be seen as rather shady. His pet snake, Changshen, who stays around his neck, says that Baizhu was pleased to have found someone to fleece when selling the everlasting incense. But he has also worked with Yanfei, a legal advisor, about people selling ineffective remedies. While Paimon and the Traveler were a bit wary of his sly attitude, Yanfei says he has always acted that way. As for Changshen, she is much more blunt than Baizhu, and often insults those around her. However, she also seems to care about their safety, as she advised Paimon and the Traveler to not trust Child. Now, Baizhu is also the guardian of the little zombie Qiqi. He found her by chance in the hills, and took her in. Due to the fact that she is a zombie, she was barely able to sort herbs or remember his face, but Baizhu didn't mind. His acceptance of Qiqi was mostly tied to his personal reasons anyway. Despite this, Baizhu is still protective of Qiqi, not allowing many people to talk with her, as we learned from Xingqiu. Hu Tao has also attempted multiple times to bury her, much to Qiqi's dismay. However, she was always stopped by Baizhu, and has now agreed to not lay Qiqi to rest. Hu Tao does hold a grudge against Baizhu though, that being for his dream of eternal life. Ever since meeting Qiqi, he has increasingly become more relentless in his pursuit of eternal life. As for why he is so interested in eternal life, this could be due to a condition that he has. You see, Baizhu suffers from an ailment that he's unable to cure, resulting in him having a poor constitution and a weak physical condition. This is most likely not Elazar, as that condition was only native to Sumeru. This condition will most likely mean that he'll be a catalyst user when he's eventually released, as any other weapon could drain his already limited energy. In fact, his energy is lower than that of Qiqi's, who has to exercise regularly to not reach rigor mortis, or the stiffness stage of death. Now, I'd like to talk about a Chinese legend known as the Legend of the White Snake, so please forgive my pronunciations. This legend focuses on a romance between a human man named Zhu Xuan and a female snake spirit named Baizhu Shen. Baizhu and Changshen may have taken inspiration from this legend, so I'll give a quick summary here. In the beginning, Zhu Shen buys some Tangyuan from a street vendor, not knowing they are actually immortality pills, and not knowing that the street vendor was Lu Dongbin, one of the 8 immortals. After not being hungry for the next 3 days, he returns to the vendor to ask why. The vendor laughs and takes him to a bridge, where he flips Zhu Shen upside down, causing him to vomit out the Tangyuan into a lake. This lake happens to be the home of the white snake spirit, Baizhu Shen, who eats the pills, granting her 500 years worth of magical powers. With this, she feels grateful to Zhu Shen, and their fates become intertwined. Baizhu Shen would go on to save a green snake by the name of Xiaoxing, and they both take on human's form during the Qingming festival, where they meet Zhu Shen. Eventually, Zhu Shen and Baizhu Shen fall in love, and they move to Zhengxiang, where they open a medicine shop. There is a lot more to this legend involving a terrapin or tortoise spirit named Fahai, who is jealous of Baizhu Shen for getting the immortality pills, and who is basically the main villain of the legend. He reveals to Zhu Shen that Baizhu Shen is actually a giant white serpent, and he dies from shock. However, Baizhu Shen and Xiaoxing are able to revive him by stealing a magical herb that brings him back to life. Despite knowing her true form, Zhu Shen still maintains his love for Baizhu Shen, and they have a child together. There is also a version of the legend where Zhu Shen and Baizhu Shen were actually immortals who fell in love, and were banished from heaven because of their forbidden romance. They are then reincarnated as a male human and a female white snake spirit respectively, and the legend continues as before. Now, I'd like to discuss some ideas regarding Baizhu and the secrets he may have, using this legend as an influence. Firstly, the idea of Zhu Shen eating and losing immortality pills could relate to Baizhu's pursuit of eternal life. Perhaps he had something similar or close to it at one point, but then lost it, which also could have led him to getting his condition of being more frail than even Qiqi. Perhaps this eternal life was transferred to Chongsheng somehow, which is why she stays with Baizhu, feeling thankful to him. Baizhu also seems to care for Chongsheng, allowing her to stay with him. There's also this cute moment when Baizhu lets Chongsheng go after his brush for a moment during the Endless Suffering short teaser released for 3.4. Baizhu also has a few bits of snake symbolism on his outfit, including a snake pattern on a sash on his leg, and an object in the shape of a snake that hangs below his vision. While the two might not get married in Genshin, of course, they still could have the rest of the backstory, and perhaps at some point Baizhu's condition catches up with him, and he falls seriously ill, unable to move. At this point, Chongsheng would go out and attempt to find a certain mystical herb or something to revive him, potentially even fully healing his condition. Though unlikely, it is possible that they may even take inspiration from the fallen gods part of the story, but I'm not too sure on that point. As for his inevitable story quest, I believe it will definitely revolve around his quest for eternal life in one way or another. It could involve him researching gods and adepti, or even the mysterious properties of the tea trees in Chenyu Vale. Perhaps his release will coincide with that of Chenyu Vale, and his story quest could introduce us to the area. It would also provide more lore about Chongsheng, who we know very little about. Perhaps she is an adeptus, or like I suggested earlier, a fallen god in hiding, perhaps similar to Orobashi, another serpent. However, his story quest may not even take inspiration from the legend, and may instead focus on something we already know about him. As I said earlier, Baizhu tends to act rather shady at times, especially in his business. Being one of the best in the medical business, many will have heard of him and would like to get their hands on his medicine. However, they may live in far-off nations and can't travel to Liyue for the sole purpose of getting medicine at Bubu Pharmacy. Baizhu would most likely be aware of this, and might even set up some sort of trade route to get his medicine to people in need. As for why this would be shady, perhaps the trade route involves some not-so-favorable partners. There's always a possibility for the Fatui to be involved in some way, perhaps to sabotage the route and take the medicine for themselves. Alternatively, this route can be involved with the vast underground intelligence network that Diluc was involved with. Either way, the route could be threatened in some way, and Baizhu, not wanting to lose Mora or medicine, would find the strength to go alongside the traveler to fix the problem, whatever it may end up being. Now, however, I'd like to discuss some more unlikely ideas. A quick disclaimer for this section. I'm aware that these ideas are quite unlikely. They're mostly just for fun, and I'm not suggesting in any way that they're actually true. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's get into this section. After looking at Baizhu's design and personality, I noticed a few connections to a certain other character we've met recently. This other character would actually be another doctor, being the Doctor, or Il Dottore. And honestly, this one could work in a few ways. Let's start with the outfit details. To begin, they both have a long strand of hair coming down on one side of the face, getting curlier as it goes down. Dottore has a mask and an earring on his right ear, while Baizhu has eyeglasses with a piece hanging off the right side. They both have those weird glowing tube thingies on their left side, ending in a similar shape. Dottore has a Plague Doctor mask pauldron with feathers around his neck, and Baizhu has Changshen. There are a few more similar physical details, but I won't go over them all. I do want to mention the pattern on Baizhu's cape though, that being a double helix, similar to a strand of DNA. This pattern could be hinting towards Baizhu being artificially created, perhaps by the Doctor himself. Baizhu may have originally been a segment created by the Doctor, but something went wrong in the process, giving him green hair and orange eyes, while also making him much weaker. Whatever went wrong may have cut him off from the other segments of Dottore, allowing him to stay alive after all the other segments were killed, or maybe Dottore just didn't care. Baizhu would be very different from the other segments, of course, but also similar in a way. He is a doctor after all, and despite seeming to care for others, he has ulterior motives and acts rather shady. While Baizhu is way nicer than Dottore, they do share similar characteristics, which adds a bit of support to the theory. Alternatively, he may have been created by the Doctor just to see if he could create life. He would have succeeded, but his creation in Baizhu would have wound up weaker than he'd hoped, so he abandoned him. This actually brings up a few other correlations between characters that the two have interacted with. If Baizhu is equivalent to Dottore, then Dottore abandoning Baizhu would mirror the Academia expelling Dottore. Qiqi would then be Baiju's Scaramouche, who he is protecting for his own goals, and who interestingly also has a theme of forgetfulness. Hu Tao trying to bury Qiqi would then align with Yai Miko wanting to kill Scaramouche instead of letting him go free. Of course, both Hu Tao and Yai Miko also eventually conceded defeat in their respective quests. It is really interesting how these parallels can be drawn, and it almost makes me believe it could be true in some way. Again though, this theory is rather unlikely, but still, it's fun to think about crazy ideas like this sometimes. One quick thing while I'm editing here, I also wanted to quickly mention the similarities between Baizhu and Pantalone. To keep in line with this previous theory, perhaps Dottore tried to create a segment or clone of Pantalone, and Baizhu is the result. We know Dottore and Pantalone do work together after all. Next week, we may finally get an update that Baizhu will be playable with Genshin strip marketing on Twitter. If we do get that, that means we have a little under 2 months until we can confirm or deny some of these theories. While the last section was a bit out there, the earlier bits on the Legend of the White Snake are still possible. Baiju's release is fast approaching, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about him in the comments below as well. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Sources and further readings are of course available in the description if you want to check them out. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you all in the next video.